In Palestine, the health minister reported that 400 people have been killed and nearly 1,500 have been injured in the last 24 hours. In Ecuador, the National Electoral Council completed the deployment of the security plan to guarantee the holding of Sunday's presidential runoff. In Australia, voters struck down the first attempt of constitutional change in 24 years, a move that will inflict lasting damage on First Nations people and suspend any hopes of modernizing the nation's founding document. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Palestine, local media reported that 400 people were killed in the ongoing Israeli bombing of Gaza in the last 24 hours, in addition to the injury of over 1,500 people. The latest figures reported by the Palestinian Ministry of Health bring the total death toll to 2,215, including 724 children and 458 women, and in the injury of 8,714 others, children and women, since the start of the Israeli aggression last Saturday. Meanwhile, local sources in Gaza report that the Israeli army resumed artillery shelling from gunships and tanks in the east and west of the Gaza Strip early Saturday morning. They also denounced that Israel is threatening hospitals amidst the collapse of health services, in addition to attacking Palestinians traveling south. Palestinians continue to scramble to flee northern Gaza on Saturday after the Israeli military ordered nearly half the population to evacuate south.
We were displaced from the Fresh area yesterday after we received the leaflets asking us to move from the Gaza border to the south, after the valley. 150 people lived in the house. We left the house without food, without water, and without clothes. We left without taking anything with us. We went to the UNRWA school in Nuseirat. Of course, life here is bad. There are no bases of life and nothing. Since we came to this yard, our family has not had any food, no water, or anything yet.
We left without clothes and without anything. I want to return to my house. I have nothing but my house. Where should I go? I want to return to my home. I have no other place. Do they want us to go to Egypt? I don't want to go to Egypt. I want to go back to my house.
And at least 20 Palestinian civilians, including children, were massacred on Saturday when Israeli warplanes bombed in Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. According to local media reports, Israeli fighter jets launched an airstrike on a residential building in Al-Fakura neighborhood located west of Jabalia refugee camp. According to information provided by the Ministry of Health, more than 80 people were wounded and rushed to the Indonesian hospital into the neighboring town of Beit Lahiya. In Palestine, Israeli forces continue to target civilians and shelters in the Gaza Strip. Humanitarian organizations have denounced that Israeli troops are carrying out attacks in humanitarian aid corridors in Gaza, with many people having been killed or injured. They say Israel maintains its siege strategy as a mechanism to advance in Palestinian territory. Meanwhile, blackouts render freezers and morgues useless, preventing citizens from giving their relative a decent burial. And we go now to Gaza, where our correspondent Noor Hassan is located to bring us the latest updates in this crucial moment.
Here in the Gaza Strip, the situation is deteriorating. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who left their homes in northern Gaza and in central Gaza City, and they are now taking shelter in southern Gaza. And even southern Gaza is not a safe place today. While we are inside the Shuhada al-Aqsa hospital, which is located in Deir al-Balah, one of the cities in southern Gaza, we saw whole families of women and children arriving to the hospital after an Israeli airstrike targeted to their home. The situation is unbearable, indescribable, a whole massacre. So even here in southern Gaza, where the Israeli army asked the Palestinian people to evacuate and take shelter, is not safe. I am now inside the Shuhada al-Aqsa hospital, and maybe you can see around me hundreds of Palestinian families took this hospital as a shelter. Also, you can see tens of media crews, journalists who are supposed to be in a safe place in all times. However, even the media crews and the journalists were forced to evacuate Gaza City and northern Gaza and start basically streaming from one of the cities in southern Gaza. That's why we do not get a lot of footage from northern Gaza. The situation, as I said, first it's deteriorating. The hospitals are running out of medicine and medical supplies, running out of fuel that generates the intensive care units and generates the premature babies units. At the same time, the hospitals here said in a statement during the past days that they will not be able to accept any injuries. However, they are forced to cope what they are facing. We're seeing lots of injuries coming to the hospitals. However, the doctors can only treat them by some stitches and bandages. This is the situation here in the Gaza Strip for now. It is not only Gaza's deadliest war with Israel, but also Gaza's worst humanitarian crisis in years. Noor Harvazin, teleSUR, Gaza.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced the delivery of humanitarian aid for the victims of the Israeli siege in the Gaza Strip. In this regard, he urged the Israeli occupation government to facilitate the passage of humanitarian aid through the Rafah crossing. At the same time, he denounced the blockade implemented by the Israeli regime, since it contradicts basic human rights. Erdogan also warned of the possibility that the conflict could destabilize the region.
We are concerned about the possibility of tension escalating and spreading across the region. We say frankly that we have never and will never accept any attacks on mosques, hospitals, and civilian gatherings. It is also clear that the blockade, which aggravated the humanitarian situation in Gaza, made the region vulnerable to provocations and dragged it into a critical situation.
On Saturday, thousands of people rallied in central London for a pro-Palestinian protest, despite police warnings that anyone showing support for Hamas could face arrest. Demonstrators displaying Palestinian flags and placards bearing slogans like "Freedom for Palestine" and "The Massacre and Sanctions for Israel" gathered near BBC News headquarters and marched through the British capital ahead of an afternoon rally near Parliament and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Downing Street office and residence. The rally comes as Israel intensified the shelling of the Gaza Strip, killing hundreds of children and women and worsening the humanitarian situation with the blockade of basic necessities. And aggregates gathered in Mosul in support of Palestinians amid Israel's ongoing airstrike on Gaza. Protesters denounced Israel's heavy bombardments of the besieged enclave that has so far killed more than 2,200 people. Tens of thousands of people have poured onto the streets around the world in support of the Palestinians. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you find news in different formats, new dates, and more. Our study is coming up. Stay with us. Ecuador, welcome back. Ecuador's National Electoral Council completed the deployment of the security plan to guarantee the holdings on Sunday's presidential runoff. Following the beginnings of the electoral silence at Mena this Friday, some 100,000 security forces were deployed throughout the country. There are more than 53,700 police officers and 42,296 military personnel in charge of protecting the public during the voting day. Also on Sunday, more than 9,000 officials of the Delhi Ministers Network, the Risk Management Secretariat, and the Integrated Security Service will be active to respond to any emergency. In this context, the Electoral Council launched on Friday the home voting process as part of the early presidential runoff. The Electoral Council established 166 mobile voting stations through 122 established routes. It is expected that some 470,000 people with disabilities will vote on Sunday's election day. In Mexico, indigenous leaders have marched demanding the release of over 50 people kidnapped by armed groups in the state of Chiapas. Relatives and inhabitants of more than 100 indigenous communities protested in the midst of the violence stirred by organized crime in the municipality of Altamira. Among those kidnapped are indigenous community leaders. The kidnapping of a group of close to 100 people occurred last Tuesday, October 10, as they returned from a meeting in the city of Tuxtla Gutiérrez, the capital of Chiapas. In Australia, voters have said no to a proposal by the Prime Minister to give First Nations people a voice in Parliament. On Saturday, Australia held a referendum on an initiative which foresaw the creation of a body double voice whose elected members would be from indigenous communities to provide independent advice to the executive and the parliament on issues relating to First Nations people. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese regretted the results and said this is not the end of the road and certainly not the end of this administration's efforts to bring people together, as he had promised in his electoral campaign. The no got 58.4% of the votes, whereas 42% of the people voted yes. In New Zealand, citizens elected a new Conservative government Saturday with incumbent Prime Minister Chris Hipkins conceding his centre-left Labour Party 6 years in power were over. Hipkins, who replaced two-term leader Jacinda Ardern in January, said he was not in position to form a government and had already congratulated Premier-in-waiting Christopher Luxon. Hipkins told Labour supporters that the result was not one that any of them wanted, but said they should be proud of what they achieved over the last 6 years. The National Party and its coalition partner ACT were projected to win 61 seats with 97% of the vote tallied, enough to secure a majority in New Zealand's 120-seat parliament. The election campaign had been dominated by an increasingly difficult economic situation and a spike in the cost of living that hit New Zealanders hard.
Earlier this evening, I called Christopher Luxon to congratulate him on National's results. While it's MMP and the numbers are likely to move around a little bit before the final count, as it stands, Labor is not in a position to form another government. I gave it my all to turn the tide of history, but alas, that was not enough.
The leader of New Zealand's National Party and Premier-in-waiting Christopher Luxon reacts after his party's success in the general election.
Government will deliver for every New Zealander. Because we will rebuild the economy and deliver tax relief. We will bring down the cost of living. We will restore law and order. We will deliver better health care. And we will educate our children so that they can grow up to live the lives that they dream of.
In Ghana, a dam overflowing has caused flooding and displacement in the southeast part of the country. The overflowing of the Asokombo Dam has resulted in at least 7 people being injured and houses and plantations near the Volta River being swept away. The Ghanaian government reports water and electricity supply failures. Meanwhile, Volta River management and the Impasse authorities have evacuated over 4,000 people from the area as a precautionary measure. The United Nations is considering an expansion of funds to help those affected by the deadly earthquake in western Afghanistan. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees launched a $14.4 million humanitarian appeal to provide shelters, heaters, and warm clothing to survivors camping outdoors. The agency is also seeking funding to repair schools and healthcare facilities and provide psychosocial and mental health support to children and families. Afghanistan was struck by two massive earthquakes last Saturday, followed by a series of aftershocks, including a major one on Wednesday that flattened several houses that were spared from the initial quake. We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to set up to date on the world's more recent events. Final show break, don't go away. Welcome back. Sudan's brutal war continues after 6 months, inflicting unmeasurable suffering and endangering lives, displacing millions from their homes and causing deaths even in areas far from the front lines. With more than 9,000 deaths, 5.6 million displaced people and refugees, cholera and disindustrialization, the war that broke out between General al-Burhani and Mohamed Hamdan Daglo has brought Sudan to its knees and ravaged its capital, Khartoum. Across the country, the frail health system is struggling, emergency rooms are overcrowded, and many hospitals have closed completely. With no end to the war in sight, NGOs are calling for a substantial increase in efforts to provide humanitarian aid and for the people of Sudan to be allowed unhindered access to medical assistance. The Egyptian opposition politician Ahmed al-Tandawi said he will withdraw from the presidential race. The decision comes after weeks of accusation of harassment and arrest by the authorities. Despite garnering significant support after announcing his intention to challenge the current president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Tantawi managed to secure only 14,000 endorsements, falling short of the required 25,000 endorsements necessary to officially register his candidacy. To be eligible for the presidential race, each candidate must submit endorsement from either 20 lawmakers or 25,000 citizens by October 15. The presidential elections is scheduled to be held from December 10th to 12th this year. In the United States, the head of the Southern Command, Laura Richardson, discredited the work of the media of Latin America and the world, among them an informative multi-platform teleSUR. During the conference, Richardson admitted that Washington is in a conflict over the dominance of information, while blaming media like teleSUR, Sputnik, and Russia Today for allegedly not practicing verification journalism, in addition to spreading disinformation and undermining democracy through the hemisphere. Richardson is the current commander of the United States Southern Command, one of the Pentagon's 6 geographic commands operating contingency plans in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean entity that maintains various military bases in the region and has been behind multiple invasions and acts of interference in the continent. The president of a multi-platform, Patricia Villegas, rejected the recent statements of the head of the U.S. Southern Command against teleSUR and assured that a platform will continue to be the voice of the people of the Global South. Patricia Villegas wrote on X 2 days ago in Latin American China Challenges. A conversation with Southcom Commander General Laura Richardson referred, among other issues, to the information battle and regrets the impact of Sputnik, Russia Today, and teleSUR. In another post, the president of our multi-platform stated, Ms. Richardson described what is not her competence and openly shows her position on media outlets, which in the case of teleSUR, have an agenda that will never depend on her office. In turn, Villegas stated the media she mentions, and particularly teleSUR, have great global and regional recognition for being the voice of a community increasingly interested in its own history and in understanding the context of reality. Objective opposed to the interfering of the aforementioned command. Finally, the president of teleSUR added that no attempts to discredit us will distance teleSUR from the path, a commitment to the construction of a region that has become a large homeland with a world with a privileged space for the South. This world that is being born is plural, with a symphony of voices. We are working on it without rest or pause. Venezuela Foreign Minister Ivan Hill denounced the recent threats of the head of the U.S. Southern Command against our teleSUR information multi-platform. On X, Venezuelan Foreign Minister wrote direct threats to teleSUR from the head of the Southern Command, Laura Richardson. They threat to intimidate the free information of the people. It is simply unacceptable. Our solidarity embraces teleSUR workers. They have not been able to silence our voice. Also, through the social network X, the Minister of Communication of Venezuela, Freddy Ñañez, said the statements of the head of the Southern Command against teleSUR, Russia Today, and Sputnik are false and represent a threat to freedom of expression and the exercise of independent journalism in Latin America. teleSUR received statements from the head of the United States Southern Command, Laura Richardson, as a threat that, far from intimidating our multi-platform, reaffirms our commitment to continue seeking and transmitting the message of those who have been silenced in their attempt to promote the processes of vindication and transformation in favor of a true democracy of people. To this effect, our users and followers in social networks have reacted in accordance with our objective and against the attacks of the spokeswoman of the powers that be based in the Pentagon and the White House. So we invite you to continue sharing your comments using the hashtag #IamTeleSUR. For now, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.